very difficult to determine. I was really surprised to see such a large number of registered voters, but I would not dare say fraudulent in any way. They certainly have a right to vote. So I've got that one yellow trending green. More work to do there. The bottom one there is a administration building for the county. You'll see this in a minute. When we first saw that, we said, man, gotcha now. There's no voters that live in downtown Austin at an administration building. That's where ignorance of the law got in the way. There are provisions for county employees who are guarding their identity, especially judges and police, to hide their addresses by using their place of employment as the registration address. It's very obvious when it's courthouses and police stations and sheriff's departments. It's not as clear when it's an admin building. So I've left that one in the yellow category for to be done. Then down there at the bottom, you're going to run into RV parks. Every county I look at has got probably 4 or 5 RV parks. We found most are gated, no trespassing signs, so attempting to do a ground audit, it's going to be a problem. I've actually gotten in and talked to some office managers who say, yeah, some of these people, you think transient, they're there for a week and they drive off. Well, no, a lot of the people literally live there for years, and the office manager says, yeah, these people vote from here. So we're giving RV parks a clearance. We have spent a lot of time talking to administrators at nursing homes and rehab centers, and we found that almost without exception, they have activity directors that help their residents register, and if necessary, even help them vote. So we've given them a clearance. Plus, you can't do much to get through any, let's say you see 10 voters that you say, that just doesn't look right. Due to HIPAA laws, they're not going to tell you who resides there. You know, if you give them that list of 10 names, they can't tell you. It violates HIPAA laws. And then the last one there is a police headquarters I mentioned just a minute ago. Now, I make another note down here at the bottom. For those of you that are going to do this, you're definitely going to find large numbers of apartments that have a single address with a lot of voters. Though, when you do the analysis, it's important you add in the apartment number. So in Excel, there's a concatenate function where you piece together different fields to give a full address. So make sure you do that. But even then, you're going to have a large number of voters at a given apartment complex that do not have an apartment number, either in their primary address or their mailing address. Those are illegal registrations. Now, do I think they're fraudulent? Not necessarily. They very well could be mistakes. The voter made a mistake, forgot to put their apartment number. It's up to the registrar in the county to find that mistake and give the voter a chance to correct it. Our finding is that's not happening very often. But just be aware when you find that, not proof of fraud. It's going to be difficult to canvass because these are gated communities, but it is something you can challenge to the election officials of your county. All right, so let me just give you a few examples of what we saw on drive-by and why drive-by was so important. We had a neighborhood that had, we didn't know it was a neighborhood like this when we first looked at it. On Google Maps, we saw a street here that had 3351 Killingsworth that now we know was all of these lots here. We had another 3300 Killingsworth that technically the address is right here, but we went to the office of this is about 1,000 small lots that have the equivalent of double wide trailers on them. And we went to the office and they said, oh yeah, I can explain that. Here, let me give you a map. And they said this was the original development and all mail went to this address, 3300 Killingsworth, and people would put their unit number. Well, when we looked at the records, we didn't see the unit numbers. We only saw this address. So once again, I thought, man, we got them. But one more time, you see this note down here, always check secondary addresses. Checking secondary addresses, the lot numbers were included this time, and a lot of them. There's still some that aren't included. There's still some errors in here. We're not done, but just be aware of any of these aha moments where you think you're looking at fraud. Make sure you do your homework, and I'm going to reiterate that one more time towards the end. This is one of those places I fell into a trap. This was the very first stop my wife and I made on drive-by, and it was an even number address that was on a side of the road that had no homes. These homes you see here were facing another street. There were homes on the right side of the street that were all odd numbered. So immediately I said, gotcha, here's the equivalent of a vacant lot. But we found mailboxes across the street at an odd number. So at first I thought nothing of it. From this non-existent address actually lived at streets surrounding this point. I have no idea why they registered the way they did. Still some more digging. There's still some mystery surrounding this. So I'm not giving you a clean bill of health, but I also learned the hard way, don't use this as what I originally claimed was a clear evidence of fraud. I don't think it's so clear that it's not black and white. It's not like we found 37 fraudulent voters, but I still have more work to do there. This is one I mentioned a minute ago. We were in downtown Austin. We saw 22 voters at this administration building. Just around the corner, we found 15 voters at the police department. Nobody lives here, nobody lives there. And so once again, I thought, gotcha, we found fraud. But luckily, I went home, pulled out the 900-page election law, and found out the exemption that county employees have, especially policemen and judges, where this is legal. I've got a friend on the Austin Police Department. I called him and said, hey, I've got 15 names here. Can you confirm these are policemen? And don't do that. He couldn't tell me, and he was pretty disappointed I would even ask him. He said that would be very illegal. These guys are protecting their identity for a reason. So be aware of that. Don't ever go to your district attorney and say, hey, I've got 15 voters at the courthouse. They're illegal, because they very likely aren't. This is one of the gray areas I'd say we've got a lot of in Austin. If you remember back to the slide I showed you earlier, there were almost 1,000 voters at 4 homeless shelters, 1,000 registered voters, actual voters, just a little over 100. So we went to 4 of these centers. This one is a church. This one's kind of a day center / church, a Episcopalian church. And so I called the administrators. They confirmed they have mailboxes at both, but these aren't residences. I actually walked up and talked to a couple of homeless guys up here, and in this left one, and asked them, do you guys vote? They looked at me like I was crazy. No, they don't vote. So, is there a ballot harvester coming and registering these folks and coming back and helping them vote? I don't know, and I'm not sure how to prove it. It's a possibility, but I would dare not call it fraud, because homeless people do have a right to vote. The laws have been changed here in Texas, effective 2 weeks ago. Where now, to get a registration, you have to live at the registration address. I don't know yet how that's going to affect the homeless, but I anticipate there will be a lot of challenges to that law. This is the last one for Travis County. This is one of the homes that had 10 voters, 14 registered. One of the first things we noticed was the basketball goal out front. It's just a middle-sized house in a very solid middle-class neighborhood. There was one car out front on a Sunday, and it's very clear this is a family that lives here, probably a family of 3 or 4. There are not 14 registered voters legitimately at this house. So that's when I came home, used people finders, found some of the registered voters don't exist. And if you've ever used people finders, you put somebody's name in and they'll give you 20 names back, and you have to find the 1 out of 20 you're looking for. And several of the voters in this case, there was nothing that came back. So I'm convinced we've got some fraudulent voters there, but it's going to require a door knock to get the details. So I've spent a lot of time talking about Travis County, that's Austin. We're doing similar analysis in Williamson County, just north of Austin. Georgetown is the county seat. I do want to point out there's plenty about Alan Vera in Houston. I don't know a lot of details about what they're doing. They are, I think, are pretty tight to the vest about their activities, but I do know they've done some great work. They're far ahead of where we are, and similar to Maricopa, they've got a huge challenge ahead of them. So congratulate that team. I think they've done some very good stuff. So here's just one example in Houston that I got from one of their team members. 77 registered voters at the UPS garage, and 44 of those voted. So one more time, there's our UPS connection. And then there's a large team in Tarrant County, which is Fort Worth. Beverly Foley leads that group and has just done a super job. And she provided this image here. Not only is it a pack and mail, which is UPS equivalent, but it's even closed and been closed for a while. 37 registered voters, 13 voted there. So very clearly, I believe, a case of fraud. So anyway, Texas is a big state. There's a lot more work to do. This will give you an idea of how we started. All right, so what do we do with all this knowledge? I'm going to reiterate again, know your state's election law. So before you pack up all this information, put it in a report and take it to your Attorney General, just make sure it's legitimate. And one thing I think we can all count on, whatever results we publish and present to sometimes county officials that may not support what we're doing, they will be scrutinized and any mistake will be used to discredit our work. So I just emphasize, go over the data again and again, look at it, assuming that it's legitimate, and you've got to figure out how to either prove that or disprove it. So once you're confident you've got some bad stuff, put it in a report. You take it to your county elected officials, county clerk, election administrator. We have a lot of election administrators here. When you don't, it's the county clerk's responsibility. Take it to your county judge, take it to your district attorney.